it off with some early top 25 lists. Gotta love the list. They're probably going to be terribly wrong here in the next few months. Um, there's so many different publications releasing their list. So I just took like a random kind of average of some of the different publications out there, and we'll talk about like what's the most common ones that are out there. I think most commonly the top three are very similar in Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State. Some people have Ohio State one, some people have Georgia one, some people have Michigan one. What are we thinking here? As far as that top of that list, is that the right list? Is there anybody else that should be in that top three? Should there be an Alabama, Penn State, Florida State? Who else? Anybody else deserve to be in that top three, or is that pretty much do you feel like the top three going into college football season? We'll start with you, Jordan.
I think that top three right there. I think Georgia is, in most people's eyes, number one. I think they're just going to reload. I think Michigan is also number two. I don't question that. They probably have the most complete team, not in the sense that they have the best team, but they have a lot of returning players. They have a lot of players that have done it, the last couple of years. So a lot of returning, a lot of just they seem a lot of like they're complete. I still have a question mark on their defense, but they seem complete. The Ohio State, I can see them being 3, 5, or 4 or 5. I see why they're 3, but there's other teams. I mean, even Alabama, LSU. If you want to talk about LSU, has probably one of the better teams this year. Just don't have a lot of depth. But I think those 3 are probably the most common, and I think probably the correct 3 just right now.
All right, Jess. Any difference of opinion from you, or do you feel like it's pretty solid top 3?
I mean, yeah, that's the top 3 I think most people have, and the top 3 that I would agree with. I mean, we've discussed kind of off the air are some of our concerns about Ohio State and their quarterback situation, which is also the same case with Alabama, which probably would be why they're not in the top 3 as they normally would be. But Ohio State just has so many good returning weapons. They have the top 2 wide receivers, arguably. They have a top 3 running back, arguably. They've got some high potential defensive players. I mean, we talked about a couple of their guys when we were discussing the top 10 players for next year's draft, the way too early look. So just based off of sheer talent, I would say you can't have Ohio State outside the top 3, but they're the only team that I really have any concerns about there.
No, yeah, for sure. I think like it's pretty solid top 3. I mean, you can make cases for other teams, but they all have issues. Honestly, outside of Georgia and Michigan, I think a lot of the teams are flawed throughout the top 25 with in some area or another, whether it's a quarterback or offensive line or defensive line. So I think the top 2 are pretty accurate in Georgia and Michigan. I think after that, it's going to be kind of a crapshoot depending on what happens in the transfer portal and schedules and what early freshmen step up, that type of thing. Let's go for the rest of this list here that we could talk a little bit of who we maybe think is overrated, underrated. So at Penn State, number 4, Washington, number 5, Alabama, number 6, Florida State, 7, LSU, 8, Notre Dame, 9, Clemson, 10, Oregon, 11, Kansas State, 12, USC, 13, Utah, 14, Oregon State, 15, Tennessee, 16, Texas, 17, North Carolina, 18, Wisconsin, 19, South Carolina, 20, UCLA, 21, TCU, 22, Ole Miss, 23, Tulane, 24, and Oklahoma, 25. So just looking at that list, that kind of average of publications out there, who do you guys think that folks are maybe overrating, and who do you think are underrating? So we'll start with overrating first. So, Jordan, who's overrated on this list? Who's higher than they should be?
Oh man, Washington. How are they 5? I mean, they
jumped out to me pretty.
Stole my answer there. Stole my answer.
That's the only answer. I think if you go down the list, all these other teams have proven that they can compete. Out of all these teams, Washington's the only one that stands out to be like, why is that there?
I mean, they had a good season last year, right? What were they record?
Yeah, but
last year
I thought they were less. I thought they had more losses because they started off hot and then they kind of fell off.
Yeah, I think they still got 10 wins. They might have been 9-3, and then they won their 10th game in the bowl game. It was somewhere. I thought they got their 10th win, but I don't know if doesn't tell me they're going to be a top 5 team in college football. It's just it stood out to me like I was like, what are they doing there? Especially above Alabama. Much as we criticize Alabama, they're loaded on all their positions outside of quarterback. So I found that was hard to believe. There's another one that stood out to me. Jeps, maybe you'll mention it. What does anybody else look overrated to you?
Overrated? I mean, I think we all have our concerns there with Clemson, but they've got a lot of talent. I mean, Penn State at 4.
That's what I had
honestly,
in my head.
I think I'd drop them.
I mean, I could see 10, number 10, maybe something like that.
No, I like them being in that top 8, but I think I would switch them and maybe Florida State if we're not going to give that spot to an Alabama.
Yeah.
Or,
Florida State or LSU to me should be in that position.
I'd flip them in Penn State. Just Penn State has not proven they can get over the Michigan and Ohio State hump. So I think I'd drop them. But I think Texas is a little underrated there.
Everybody else is on that Texas. Here, Urban Meyer say that.
I was about to bring
everybody.
Up Urban Meyer.
Texas has the best roster in college football.
I just
Urban Meyer.
Texas and UNC are going to have their seasons determined by whether or not their quarterback can take that step everyone is anticipating. Drake May, I think, even if he doesn't take that next step, is going to be the number 2 quarterback off the board in the 2024 draft. But Quinn Ewers has a lot to prove this year. And if both of those teams can get those steps, I don't see UNC really competing just because of the overall roster. But Texas has way too much talent. And if Quinn Ewers takes that next step, they're a top 10 team.
I mean, they should be inferior, right? But they should be many years. They have the talent. It's just, can they put it all together? I think even if Quinn Ewers gets hurt, I think Malik Murphy has the talent to keep them rolling. But they go to Alabama, which is going to be a tough game. So I think that's a loss for them. And then, it's probably going to be a toss-up of Oklahoma. And then, so it's going to be a tough row ahead. But I think, to your point, they have the talent for sure. Okay, that's the overrated. What's about underrated? Like who do you guys see on this list that people are underestimating going into the season? Start you, Jess. Who do you got? Like, who's jumping out at you that should be much higher?
Or as I just said, Texas, I think, is underrated. USC, it's a quarterback-driven game at this point. So you got the number 1 quarterback. USC has all this, like Texas, they have all this offensive talent, but, they've brought in some defensive guys. They had a very good recruiting class. Seeing them at 13
it was kind of low.
Oregon.
Yeah,
I don't know if I like that.
I think they're gonna be better in Washington, honestly. So,
I mean, we're all beating on poor Washington here, but they've still got what's his face, Michael Penix Jr. I think Michael Penix, not Penix, Penix Jr. A lot of people are very high on him. They've got a solid roster. I don't like them being top 5. Again, I think the Pac-12, or what remains of it at this point, it's going to come down to USC, Oregon, and Washington. But I'm the highest here, I think, on USC. You guys have your dislike of USC being Notre Dame fans, but it's 13. It just feels a little low to me. I think I would have them at 10. I think I would make them a top 10 team. They've still got some stuff to prove, but yeah, I'd go USC is underrated outside of Texas.
All right, Jordan, who do you got as the underrated team that's popping out to you here?
Probably to me, UCLA. I think they have a really solid recruiting class this year. They have one of the best quarterbacks coming in. So I think that if they had the pieces last year, I think they're going to build on it this year, and I think they should be a little higher, just in the sense that they had a really outstanding year last year in UCLA standards, and they're in my eyes better than Wisconsin. Just right now, I can't say Wisconsin is going to be a almighty team this year. I can even say they're a little better than South Carolina. I think they should have been over those two teams at least. At least 19. But that's my team. I just think that UCLA is getting a lot of slack um, from last year. They had a really good season, and I think they're gonna step on that with their Dante Moore coming in and maybe pushing their quarterbacks to be better.
All right. I guess if you're just looking at it from anybody else jumping out, I would say for me, Oklahoma, I think is underrated at 25. I know they had a terrible season last year, but if you kind of watch what they did in the offseason, they had a top 5 recruiting classes with they have 3 or 4 5-stars that are ready to play right away, and they also had one of the best transfer portal classes. They're going to be able to fill in and hopefully, I think, take Brent Venables' defense and actually play it the way it's supposed to be played and really make an improvement there. I actually think they're going to win the Big 12 and beat Texas this year. It's just my early thoughts on it, which means it'll probably be terrible throughout the season.
It's for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, unless you just go like, you know what? I think the playoff, it's going to come down to some variation of Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and a random fourth. At least this year.
Well, no, Tony is really good at picking a team and then losing. Their team sucks, so don't. Well, Oklahoma fans, I'm sorry in advance, just for Tony.
I think it's the year to sooner. I think they're gonna get a chance to play, get close to the playoff. I'm not saying they're gonna make the playoffs, but I think they're gonna do it.
Just guaranteed them an 8-4 record.
Maybe,
year.
Yeah, might have.
No. If you go back in time, Indiana, he said he was.
I've had some good picks as well.
Oh, you've had some bad picks though.
Like Washington State had a pretty good season last year, and I said they're going to have a pretty good season.
Can we talk about Indiana?
Michael Penix got hurt. Well, I can't help that Michael Penix got hurt. I can't call that.
It's your fault, though.
Okay, you're either way, you're wrong. This is going to be the year of the Pirate ECU undefeated national champs.
Let me see. Where are they at on this list?
I don't think they're even close to even.
I think they're like the bottom.
Week 1 at Michigan, we're going to come in. We're going to be like 38-point dogs, and we're going to stun the world. All right? We're going to stun the world.
All right. Well, good luck to you guys out there, Pirate Land. All right. The other team that kind of stands to me, I think we talked about them a little bit, LSU. I think LSU had a really good spring. I really like the, they have some good transfer portal pickups. I think they have a second-year quarterback that can run the Brian Kelly offense with a good backup. Depth is going to be their issue, so they have some injuries that could hurt them. But I think their front, all their starters, I mean, they're probably one of the more talented teams in the country. They won. I think they won the East last year without being quite ready for it. I think this year they're more ready, and Alabama has even taken a step back, maybe with the quarterback situation. So there's a good chance they could be back in the SEC title game against Georgia again. And so for me, that'd be something to watch this year. Because anybody else? Oregon State, interesting, number 15. I know DJ is there, DJU. Be interested to see how he picks up that offense, if he wins the job, if he does well there, because that could really tell you if they're going to stay in that 15th range or drop out of that top 25 or not. And then the other interesting one to me is Tennessee at 16. I just don't know quite what to expect for them if this is a quarterback-friendly system they run, if it was all on Hidden Hooker, or what that offense is going to look like with a new quarterback this year. I think Joe Milton playing his 5th year, so we'll see how he does. But be interested to see how Tennessee does. Anybody else you guys want to comment on? Jordan, over to you.
Maybe Utah. I mean, yeah, but if we go off last year, I think Utah should be over at least Oregon and USC, just because Utah last year they had a better season overall. But other than that, no, yeah.
All right, Jess, how about you, sir? Any final comments?
I think Tennessee this year is going to be pretty boom or bust. There was a lot of talk about the quarterback that they have. he's very much kind of this pure raw talent guy. He doesn't have a lot of, definement to his game yet. Another kind of like the Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, great athlete, huge arm, but can you refine him? So if he hits, they brought in some good freshmen. It's going to be very interesting to see. Or do they go to the 5-star true freshman quarterback? So that's going to be something to watch.
Yep. No, it will be. If him, obviously Milton played at Michigan. And he just kind of flamed out. He was wowing in practice and never translated to the game. He did play well in the bowl game last year, so he's definitely in a more quarterback-friendly offense. I'll be interested to see how that does throughout the year. More game tape is on him, and how he runs that system. So, all right.